Welcome back! Today we're continuing our study of Goethe's Faust, and we're going to be looking at the scene outside the city gate. What am I doing cooped up in my classroom? I ought to be outside studying this scene. So, outside the city gate begins with 2.5 pages of random conversations by the townspeople who have gone outside to have picnics on this bright Easter Sunday. And they're talking about all the things you'd normally expect people to talk about, like having fun, going to parties, significant other people, politics, war, all that sort of stuff. The VMAs. It's all the stuff of casual conversation. Nothing deep, nothing profound, nothing beyond the surface. And then in walks Faust. Now, why does Goethe spend all this time with all these conversations? After all, you might be able to get the point pretty quickly, but instead, he goes 2.5 pages, really driving it home. It certainly does create a contrast between all these common people and Faust. And when Faust begins to talk in a moment and says that no one understands him, we'll understand that even more clearly. In fact, of all the parallels I've drawn to Disney, this one was the clearest to me. This scene seems almost identical to the opening scene of Beauty and the Beast, when Belle walks out into the town and she's around all these everyday people with their everyday boring conversations, and she wants something more. That's pretty much straight this scene. Faust and Wagner begin their walk out into the fields on this Easter Sunday, and Faust is exuberant. He's alive again. Remember in the last scene, he was about to die, and all of a sudden he was resurrected by the sound of the Easter bells, and he was rejuvenated and restored to life. Now Faust looks around at nature and at nature wakening up in the spring, and he feels like everything around him is alive as well. Listen to the exuberance as he talks. Freed from the ice are brooks and rivers by spring's enchanting enlivening gaze, and the valley is blithe with hope's green haze. Hoary winter with senile shivers back to his mountain lair withdrew. Thence he flings, shorn of his powers, granules of ice and spiteful showers, streaking over the verdant site. The sun, however, allows no white. All is astir with shaping and striving. All he would dower with hues and enliven. The flower season still lies ahead. Folk in their finery do instead. Turn around with me, look down from these lofty hillsides back toward town. See how the gate's dark cave exudes teeming, colorful multitudes. All seek the sun with glad accord. They exult in the rising of the Lord. For they are resurrected themselves, freed from the shackles of shops and crafts, from stuffy dwellings like narrow shelves, from smothering roofs and gable lofts, from the city streets with their smothering press, from out the church's reverent night, they have all been raised to light. He celebrates not only the coming of spring and the enlivening of nature, but also the enlivening of humanity. Here are all these people who used to be boarded up in their town, all enclosed and surrounded by others and in their shops in the dark, and finally here they are released to go out and picnic on the countryside. And as they picnic on the hillside out here, they are alive and they are awakened, they are resurrected. He calls the gate's dark cave, as though the inside of the city is a grave almost, and here are these people who are resurrected to life to get among nature and live and experience it. He concludes his speech by saying, "True peoples heaven, crowded, heady, and young and old exult in glee. Here I am man, am free to be." Out in nature, you're free to truly be yourself and be alive, according to Faust. However, Wagner begs to differ. "To stroll with you, Sir Doctor, never but profits and exalts the mind, but on my own I would not stray here ever, because I shun all that is unrefined. How I abominate these vulgar revels, the fiddling, roaring clash of the bowling run. They rave as if pursued by 1,000 devils. They call it singing, call it fun." Wagner is not impressed by the peasantry and all of their fun and games out here on the hillside. He'd much rather just be sitting back in his old study, cooped up, and listening to Faust talk. The only reason he's out here at all is because he wants to continue his conversation with Faust. We come across a band of peasants who are the same people that Wagner is snubbing his nose at, and they're singing and dancing and having a wild time, and as they dance around, they see Faust, and an older man walks up to him and greets him and offers him a mug of ale to thank him for his service in the past. Bit of backstory. A long time ago there was a plague, and Faust, when he was younger, worked with his father to try to alleviate the plague. because Fausts' father was a doctor and dabbled in alchemy as well, and so he was trying to find a cure for the plague, and he would go around and give medicines to people. The old peasant is very pleased to have Faust there among them, and he congratulates him on having such a wonderful father, and Faust sort of tries to tone it down, tries not to really revel in the praise he's receiving from these peasants. As they walk away, Wagner is all excited about how Faust seems to have achieved celebrity status among these people, and he says, "What sentiment, great man, must swell within your breast upon the homage of this multitude? Ah, who can derive such good from his own gifts is indeed blessed. Wow, you're so fancy and special." As we get a little bit farther, Faust begins to explain how his father and his participation in the plague was really not what it was made out to be. His father dabbled in alchemy and mixed together all these chemicals and then experimented on the people who were sick. He never actually cured any of them. In fact, some of them he sent to a much horrible death than they were already experiencing. He describes the process of him mixing the chemicals there, and he says, "Nobody inquired who was healed, and thus with our infernal tonic upon these hills and dales we visited a plague far worse than the bubonic. Why, with this poison I myself defrauded men by the thousands, leaving them for dead. Now I must hear the brazen killers lauded." Faust feels a sense of guilt for his inability to heal the people and the way that his attempted medicines actually just poisoned them. But Wagner goes on to say, well, you know, you live, you learn, you grow, every mistake you make leads you on to a better future, so it's alright. And Faust does manage to brush it off. He sits down on a rock and he looks up to the sky. He tries not to lose that hopefulness that he had at the beginning of the day, that new life that he was experiencing. He looks how the sun is beginning to set as the day is going on, and he experiences this great wish. Oh, that I had no buoyant wings to flourish, to strive and follow on and on. I'd see in endless vesper rays the silent world beneath me glowing, the valleys all appeased, each hill ablaze, the silver brooks to golden rivers flowing, with no more would then this rugged bluff deny, with cliff and precipice the godlike motion. Already with its sun-warmed bays the ocean reveals itself to the astonished eye. At last it seems the god is downward sinking. Yet to new urge awakes the mind. I hasten on, his ceaseless radiance drinking, the day ahead of me, the night left behind, the waves below and overhead the sky. A happy fancy. Meanwhile he must pass. To spirit wings will scarce be joined, alas, corporeal wings wherewith to fly. Yet it is innate in us all, that feeling, ever upward, forward presses, when lost above in heaven's azure spaces the skylark trills his jubilant call. When over craggy fir-clad highlands on outspread wing the eagle rides, and striving over plains and islands the crane towards his homeland glides. As Faust watches the sunset, he wishes that he had wings, so that like a bird he could follow the sun and always have the sun in front of him, that this day would never end, that it would never sink down to night, and he would always be able to fly away. But even though his spirit has wings, his soul does not, and he is grounded. He says that it's innate in us all. All of us are born with a desire to fly. However, Wagner is the exception. I too have been to moody crotchets given by such an urge, though I was never driven. The charm in watching woods and fields is brief. I shall never begrudge the bird its soaring. Compare the mind's delight, which wing us pouring from book to book, from leaf to leaf. Wagner doesn't want to fly, he just wants to read. And Faust has another speech that's particularly important here. He notices that Wagner is single-minded. Wagner only has one desire, and it's a very accessible desire, and so Wagner in some ways is better off than Faust. He's content with his lot. But Faust is divided in his desire. He describes it as having two souls in his breast. He says, "You are by just a single urge possessed. Oh, may you never know the other. Two souls, alas, are dwelling in my breast, and either would be severed from its brother. The one holds fast with joyous earthly lust unto the world of man with organs clinging. The other soars impassioned from the dust to realms of lofty forebears ringing." So he understands that he needs to be part of this human world and still desires to continue his life. After all, that's why he didn't drink the poison. But he also desires to fly away. He desires his soul to soar through the sky. And he finishes the speech by calling on whatever spirits may be around to hear. He says, Oh, be there spirits in the air, who twixt the earth and heaven reigning hover. Descend ye from the golden fragrance there, to new and changeful living lead me over. If there are any spirits around here who have any interest and want to come down here and change my life, come on. Who is this an invitation for? That's right, Mephistopheles. Mephistopheles happens to be hovering around and is very eager for Faust to invite him in and allow him to come in and change his life. Faust goes on and says, "Why, if a magic cape were only mine and were to bear me over alien borders, I'd trade it not for choicest robes and orders, nor for royal cloak incarnadine. If only I had a magic cape that could fly me away." Whether or not he gets a magic cape remains to be seen. We'll find out pretty soon. But Wagner goes on, continuing to be pedantic, but Faust isn't listening anymore. He's looking out there and he sees this poodle that's running towards them. And he says,
"Ah, what is that thing? It's terrifying, it's ominous, it's dark."
And Wagner goes, "It's a poodle. It's really a poodle."
Do you observe him near and nearer, loping in narrowing spirals like a convolute snail? Unless I err, there rises in his track a swirling, fiery effusion.
I see a poodle, and I see it's black. Yours must have been some optical illusion.
He seems to snare our feet with magic, weaving some future bondage, tread by stealthy tread.
He's circling us in wonder or misgiving to see two strangers in his master's stead.
The ring grows tight, already he's nearer.
You see? A dog. There is no specter here. He gives a growl. He wonders, lies down flat. He wags his tail. All canine conduct, that. And then Faust realizes, oh, you're right. It is a dog. Okay. And so they take their new pet home. What becomes of them when he returns to his study at night? We will find out next time.
Little town, it's a German village. Every day like the one before. Little town full of little people waking up to say,
Guten Tag! Guten Tag! Guten Tag!
Here goes the schnitzel man with his tray, like always. The same old schnitzel snacks to sell. Every morning just the same, since the morning that I came to this little German town.
Good morning, Faust!
Hello. Hello, Wagner.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to watch the previous episode, you can click up here, or you can click over here and watch the next episode. Click down here to subscribe. And I'll see you next time